Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Strong Women and Girls. I'm Donna Seaman, Adult Books Editor at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. Links to today's slide presentation and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom an hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download the slides and title list by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. If you have any trouble accessing these materials, please contact us, webinars@booklistonline.com. We'll be happy to help you. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions. We will pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Last but not least, Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click on the live transcript icon on the toolbar. From there, you can select show or hide subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the caption at any time by selecting subtitle settings. All right, today we have a wonderful program. We have the pleasure of hearing from Emily Ludla, Library Marketing Associate at Sourcebooks, Dulce Bateo, Marketing Assistant at Crooked Lane Books, Kate Kelly, author of Ordinary Equality, The Fearless Women and Queer People Who Shaped the U.S. Constitution and the Equal Rights Amendment. She's here from Gibbs Smith. Kate Hannigan, author of Nellie versus Elizabeth and A Lady Has the Floor from Astra Books for young readers. Carrie McManus, Senior Marketing Manager at Astra Books for young readers. Chelsea Abdullah, Marketing Assistant at Astra Books for young readers. And Kara Rota, Senior Editor at Chicago Review Press. What a group. First, we will hear from Emily Ludla. Emily is a Library Marketing Associate at Sourcebooks. Previously, she worked with some of the top names in the music industry in Nashville, Tennessee, but ultimately could not resist the pull of her first love, books. Thanks for being here, Emily.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you to Booklist for having me at this wonderful webinar during Women's History Month. I am thrilled to have the opportunity to talk to you about the strong women and girls taking a stand in some of our upcoming books. All of these titles are available as e-galleys on NetGalley and Edelweiss. Please feel free to reach out with any questions you have about our new titles, resources, or virtual author visits. As Donna said, my name is Emily Ludloff, and I am a Library Marketing Associate at Sourcebooks. We would love for you to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Sourcebooks Library for updates and information that will interest librarians and educators. Next slide, please. All right, we're going to start off this webinar talking about some kids' titles. Next slide. When Amitra and Kiki endure family nitpicks about lightning cream, sun rays, and the skin darkening effects of the color yellow, they must stand up to reject the racist belief that dark skin is less beautiful. In an inspiring story of BIPOC friendship and female entrepreneurship for fans of hair love and eyes that kiss in the corners, Amitra and Kiki create a fashion line that celebrates the beauty of all tones and shades, showing how girls everywhere can become the change they want to see in the world. Next slide, please. From Cleopatra to Joan of Arc, Amelia Earhart to Rosa Parks, and many more, readers will dive into the lives of 100 female artists, activists, scientists, and icons who left their mark on history in this fact-filled biography collection for kids. Organized chronologically, this thoroughly researched biography collection offers a look at the contributions these women made and how their talents, discoveries, and ideas have helped guide humanity for thousands of years. Next slide, please. We're going to go up now onto our Sourcebooks Young Readers imprint for titles that will appeal to middle grade audiences. Next slide, please. In Other Side of the River, 12-year-old Petra Luna is in America after escaping the Mexican Revolution. As her family slowly builds their new lives, Petra starts to believe that even her most remote dreams of learning to read and write are within reach. Yet, she also sees in America the extremes of rich and poor that she thought she left behind, and she begins to wonder if it's better to return to Mexico to fight for a better life there. Soon, Petra finds her strength and courage tested as she discovers for herself what's truly worth fighting for. Next slide, please. Of course, I'd be remiss without mentioning some of the strong women in our YA titles from Sourcebooks Fire. Next slide, please. From the author of The Nature of Witches comes Wild is the Witch, an immersive, high-stakes contemporary fantasy. Iris vents her frustrations by writing curses she never intends to cast, and spends her day at the wildlife refuge with a witch-hating intern, Pike Adler. Iris concocts the perfect curse for Pike, one that will turn him into a witch. But just as she's about to dispel it, a bird steals the curse before flying away. If the bird dies, the curse will be unleashed. Iris begs Pike to help her track the bird, and they set out on a trek through the Pacific Northwest. And they find that they might like each other's company more than they want to admit. Next slide, please. I'm so incredibly excited to share my favorite book of the year, personally, Monsters Born and Made, with you. When Coral's family's financial situation becomes dire, Coral's only choice is to do what no one in the world has ever dared: cheat her way into the glory race, a deadly chariot tournament reserved for the upper class. The winning contender receives gold and glory. The others, if they're lucky, survive. But every step of the way is unpredictable as Coral races against contenders who have trained for this their whole lives and who have no intention of letting a low-caste girl steal their glory. When riots break out and rogues attack Coral to try and force her to drop out, she must choose her life or her family's before the entire island burns. Next slide, please. So let's introduce some mystery into our lives with our Poison Pen imprint. Next slide, please. In Woman in the Library, Hannah receives a fan letter from a distant friend asking after her newest mystery book. Delighted by the inquiry, she responds with a few pages, a novel she's been working on for about 4 strangers who become inseparable after a murder is discovered at their library. Thrilled and intrigued, Leo writes back with helpful advice. The 4 friends in Hannah's book will have to help her create a world that absorbs Leo's increasingly insistent, dark attention in this clever puzzle within a puzzle about an author trying to write her own fate without losing control of the story. Next slide, please. And of course, let's get into some adult fiction titles from Sourcebooks Landmark. Next slide, please. From the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek, comes The Bookwoman's Daughter, a delightful return to the librarians and blue people of Kentucky. Honey Lovett, the daughter of Cussy Mary and Jackson, finds herself back in Troublesome Creek, where she takes on a library route and befriends a coal miner and a fire lookout. Together, these 3 women must find strength in their friendship and the power of books in order to overcome prejudice, isolation, and the unforgiving Appalachian landscape. Next slide, please. Based loosely on real historical figures and full of exquisite detail about 19th century medicine, The Surgeon's Daughter is a story of Nora Beatty, a young medical student determined to revolutionize the field of medicine and save women's lives by developing the cesarean section surgery. But in doing so, she'll risk her career, the lives of mothers, and the fate of women in science. Next slide, please. The Lies I Tell by Julie Clark follows Meg, a con artist, and Kat, the woman hunting her. Meg erases herself to become whoever you need her to be. She slides alongside you and tells you exactly what you want to hear. And by the time she's done, you've likely lost everything. Kat has been waiting 10 years for the woman who upended her life to return. And now that she has, Kat is determined to be the one to expose her. But as the two women grow closer, Kat's long-held assumptions begin to crumble, leaving Kat to wonder who Meg's true target really is. Next slide, please. We travel to a hot, sticky summer in Georgia in the Floating Girls, where 12-year-old Kay stumbles across a stilt house in a neighboring marsh and upon Andy Weber, a boy about her age. Kay is fascinated and enamored with Andy, and she doesn't listen when her father tells her to stay away from the Webers. But when Kay's sister goes missing, and the mystery of Mrs. Weber's death and Kay's parents' potential role in it comes to light, Kay and her brothers must navigate the layers of secrets that emerge in the course of the investigation as their family and the world as they knew it unravels around them. Next slide, please. When an opportunity arises for Nora to work for Vinyl magazine as the assistant to the iconic editor-in-chief, Loretta James, Nora jumps at the once-in-a-lifetime chance in 100 Other Girls. But it quickly becomes clear that there's a darker side to Vinyl magazine. The old school print team and the new age digital team are at war with each other, sabotaging one another's content, poaching talent, and exposing secrets. As both sides attempt to use her as a spy, Nora must also juggle the relentless demands of her job with her own goals, all while navigating a tentative new friendship with a brilliant editor, a fallout with her sister, and an ill-advised attraction to the hot IT guy. Next slide, please. What if Nazi Germany won the war? Widowland is an alternative history, feminist dystopian novel with a literary twist that blends elements of The Handmaid's Tale and The Man in the High Castle. Rose Ransom works for the Ministry of Culture, editing classic books to fit in better with the new regime. When graffiti that quotes subversive lines by famous women start popping up all over the country, Rose finds herself embroiled in the investigation to discover the criminals behind it. Soon later, caught up in an assassination plot, she is forced to choose between the language of the law and that of her heart. Next slide, please. So that is all from me. Thank you all for listening, and thank you again to Booklist for letting me share sourcebook titles featuring strong women and girls. Please reach out to me at my email here on this page if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. That was wonderful. Well, we'll now hear from Dulce Bateo, marketing assistant. Dulce graduated with a BA in Arts, Media, and Entertainment from the University of Arizona, and she has an MS in Publishing from NYU. During her undergraduate studies, Dulce interned at Core Press, a nonprofit feminist press. She also interned with Macmillan Publishers in the Subrights department, where upon graduation, she joined the Special Sales Division. Dulce loves to read everything and anything that lands on her lap, but has a special affinity for dystopian stories, thrillers, and the occasional fantasy. We're so glad you're here, Dulce.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Since 2015, Crooked Lane has been publishing quality crime fiction for mystery readers. And in 2020, we launched Alcove Press to publish book club fiction ranging from historical to rom-coms and everything in between. I'm so excited to tell you about some of our forthcoming titles today. We've got debut authors and some ongoing fan favorite series, all featuring women and girls who are strong, fierce heroines to root for. Next slide, please. First, we're going to dive into Crooked Lane title. Next slide, please. The Power meets the stand in Into the Mist from #1 New York Times bestselling author of the House of Night series, PC Cast. We all know what makes a good post-apocalyptic story. The world is thrown into chaos, alliances are formed, and the tougher, smarter man comes out on top. But what if the stronger woman came out on top? What would a matriarchal post-apocalyptic world look like? In Into the Mist, a group of high school teachers are on their way home from a conference when bombs begin to fall all around them, releasing a strange mist. If breathed in, the mist is deadly to all men, but it alters the body chemistry of many women, giving them superhuman abilities. As they cross the Pacific Northwest to find a safe place, they quickly learn they can't trust anyone, and that fresh danger is always around the corner. Into the Mist is packed with timely commentary on power, community, and gender roles. This is the perfect book for readers looking for a fresh, new feminist dystopian fiction. This one publishes in July. Next slide, please. From debut author Kate Kavari, A Botanist's Guide to Parties and Poisons is a fun, fast-paced feminist adventure. Perfect for fans of The Lost Apothecary or Dead Girls, this 1920s set historical mystery follows research assistant Saffron Everly as she tries to clear her mentor's name of murder. One of the things that makes this book so great is her strong protagonist, Saffron. She's bold, brave, and passionate about her work with poisonous plants. She's a tough-as-nails heroine who is constantly fighting against society's expectations of her. We know you're going to love her. You may have noticed I use the term feminist. The author was inspired by women in science and crafted this story with the need for more women in STEM in mind. This one will be a June publication. Next slide, please. Up next, we have The Collector by Anna Mette Hancock. This book is #2 in the #1 Danish bestselling series, featuring intrepid journalist Eloise Calden and detective Eric Schaefer. Book #1, The Corpse Flower, published in October. This series is perfect for fans of Camilla Lackberg and Katrin Engberg. In The Collector, 10-year-old Lucas disappeared from his Copenhagen school. When Eloise begins digging into the disappearance, she sees a photo of the boy on the boy's phone with an old barn door. She believes she recognizes the barn, but from where? The Collector asks, what is the nature of truth and what does it mean when we can no longer trust what we see to be real? Katrin Enberg said, Hancock writes with a razor-sharp pen, and I think this perfectly sums up the style and voice of this author. It's snappy and smart and full of relatable characters who have overcome past trauma to send a strong role model. Next slide, please. Calypso Corpses and Cooking by Raquel V. Reyes is book 2 in the Caribbean Kitchen Mystery, featuring Miriam Quiñones-Smith and the flavors of Cuban cooking. As the clock ticks down and the body count rises in Coral Shores, Miami, Miriam's life is put in danger, and it's up to her to catch a killer. This series is on Mia P. Manansala's Insta list, and the New York Times said, it furthers my belief that the cozy mystery has become one of the most diverse, most vibrant in contemporary fiction. Whether you're looking for an A+ mystery or some foodie flair, Miriam is a sleuth that our readers love, whether she's parenting her son Manny or bravely supporting her friends in Coral Shores. The first book in this series, Mango, Mambo, and Murder, was a Lefty Award nominee, an Agatha Award nominee, and a Library Journal Best Book of 2021. Next slide, please. Next, we have a young adult title for you. Teen Killers in Love is the sequel to Teen Killers Club, which published in November 2020. Teen Killers Club was a Junior Library Guild Pick, Yalta Best Fiction nominee, and IDW Award nominee. It also received a starred characters review. This time around, our Class A felons are on the run. Their camp has been burnt to the ground, and one faction is pitted against another in a deadly game of survival. As if that wasn't enough, Eric is determined to get Signal to admit that she loves him. But Signal is hell-bent on crushing her own growing attraction. It's a race against time to save the Teen Killers Club from its worst nightmare, having to kill the friends they need more than ever. This is a perfect read for fans of These Deadly Games and The Babysitter's Coven. Kendara Blake calls it sick, twisted, fast-paced fun. Signal is a spunky, strong blue-haired teen who is not afraid to dive into her past to save those closest to her. Fans of book one couldn't help but cheer for her, and we're so excited to share this next part of her adventure with you. Next slide, please. If you're looking for a cozy mystery with a twist, then Magic, Lies, and Deadly Pies by Misha Pop is definitely for you. The first time Daisy Ellery killed a man with a pie, it was an accident. Now it's her calling. Her pies have a secret ingredient, the ability to avenge women done wrong by men. But if she can't solve the one crime that's not of her own baking, she'll be out of the pie and into the oven. Perfect for fans of Ellery Adams and inspired by Pushing Daisies, Magic, Lies, and Deadly Pies is a timely and refreshing take on light crime with Me Too commentary. This book publishes in May. Next slide, please. If you love the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Mad Men, and 1950s PI novels, then you will love series debut Viviana Valentine Gets Her Man. Viviana Valentine is Girl Friday to New York City's top pirate investigator, Tommy Fortuna. After some run-ins with a particularly difficult client, Viviana opens the office to find Tommy MIA and a lifeless body on the floor. Tommy is wanted for murder, but Viviana is desperate to clear his name. So she does what any headstrong secretary would do. She takes on the case herself. With richly atmospheric 1950s New York City setting and a whip-smart protagonist similar to Rosalie Vera Kelly, Viviana Valentine Gets Her Man is an entertaining look at detective work and society's expectations of women in the workplace. Next slide, please. From debut author D.M. Rowell comes Never Name the Dead, a mystery in which old grudges, tribal traditions, and outside influences collide. No one called her Mud in Silicon Valley. There she was May, a highly powered professional who had left her Kiowa roots behind. But when she receives a cryptic voice message from her grandfather asking her to come home, she knows something is wrong. As outside forces threaten Mud's family, tribes, and ancestral land, she sets out to make things right. Drawing from her own Kiowa roots, D.M. Rowell has crafted a crime novel that will be a shoo-in for fans of Winter Counts by Davy Heska Wombly Waden. Although this time, we've got a headstrong heroine determined to save her family and tribal traditions. Next slide, please. Next, we're going to transition to Alcove Press. Next slide, please. Debut novel Laura Shepperson offers a controversial retelling on the much maligned Phaedra, flipping the script on victim versus villain for fans of Madden Miller and Natalie Haynes. Phaedra is a powerful queen, granddaughter of a god, plucked from the court of Crete to be the wife of Theseus, the Minotaur slayer. Theseus' son, Hippolytus, is known as a man of honor, but he and his friends are truly beasts and a menace to Athens. Despite this, Phaedra finds herself in love with Hippolytus, but then the unthinkable happens, and Phaedra accuses Hippolytus of rape. Is this accusation Phaedra's revenge for her stepson's refusal of her attentions, or is Hippolytus truly a monster in disguise? This lyrical and heartbreaking adaptation offers readers a deep dive into themes of guilt, victimhood, and womanhood. It explores victim blaming and toxic masculinity. In short, this is a must-read for reading groups and book clubs. Next, please. For fans of Lori Frankel and Therese Ann Fowler, the Neapolitan Sisters is the story of three sisters leading vastly different lives, coming home again for a wedding. Growing up with a kind but alcoholic father and a passive-aggressive mother, the sisters each develop their own way of coping. Now, Marisa is getting married, and Claudia and Justina return to East LA and begin to take steps toward coming to terms with each other and their shared secrets from their past. Author Margot Candela has infused her own Los Angeles upbringing into this vibrant story and created a truly resonant novel that speaks to the power of love and strength of sisterhood. Next slide, please. From USA Today bestselling author Marty Wingate, The Orphans of Mercy House takes us to 1957 England. In 1957, the British government abruptly closed the country's orphanages, leaving many vulnerable children without care. Wingate's research on this topic shines through in her newest work of fiction and delivers us bold and brave new characters to care about, including a young girl with polio and a woman willing to sacrifice everything to care for her. Wingate's 2021 novel, Glamour Girls, was a huge hit with readers looking for empowering young female leads. Be on the lookout for this one in August. Next slide, please. Told in alternating points of view, All the Lights Above Us is the story of 5 women during the day that would change their lives forever, D-Day. American expat Mildred, better known as Axis Sally, has a thriving career as a Nazi radio propagandist, but her conscience haunts her. Young medical volunteer Sita is pushed to her limits as shiploads of casualties dock in Portsmouth. Intrepid Flora aids the French resistance while she seeks out her banished parents. Iron-willed Amelia has climbed the Gestapo ranks, but she can no longer work with them. And dignified Adelaide Sade is shaken when she is forced to quarter German soldiers. Now, during the 24 most perilous hours of their lives, all 5 women must summon the courage they didn't know they had. But is it enough? This is perfect for Kate Quinn and Larry Prescott fans. This is a May release, so it will be available just in time for commemoration of D-Day. Next slide, please. And that wraps it up for us today. Thank you so much for taking the time to hear about our most anticipated 2022 books featuring strong girls and women. If you have any questions, comments, or requests for our found copies, feel free to send us an email. And if you want to stay up to date, you can sign up for our newsletter at crookedlanebooks.com, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. We look forward to hearing from you, and happy reading, everyone.
Thank you so much, Dulce. We'll now hear from Kate Kelly. Kate Kelly is a feminist, activist, and human rights lawyer. She holds a JD degree from the American University, Washington College of Law, the only law school in the country founded by and for women. She's a nationally known advocate for the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment and host and creator of the podcast Ordinary Equality. Kate lives in Washington, D.C. with her partner, Jamie Manson. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate_Kelly_Esquire, ESQ period, to learn more about the Equal Rights Amendment. And for an up-to-date list of news and articles about its current progress, visit ordinaryequality.com. Kate, thank you for being here.
Hi, everybody. I am so excited to be here. And there's so many interesting, just absolutely fascinating titles. So thank you so much for having me. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about my book. It's called Ordinary Equality. It's about 12 different women and queer people. So each chapter features a different person. And the title of the book comes from this quote. Alice Paul is one of the original suffragists that got the 19th Amendment across the finish line. And she said, most reforms, most problems are complicated, but there is nothing complicated about ordinary equality. And that is where I get the name of the book. And Alice Paul is one of the chapters. She's featured in one of the chapters. And she's a very complicated figure, but she kind of ties the two movements together, the Equal Rights Amendment in the beginning and towards the end, which has been a 100-year-long journey. So the Equal Rights Amendment was first introduced in Congress in 1923 and wasn't passed in Congress until 1972. So it's been 100 years in the making, if you can believe it. The design of the book, the idea of the book came to me. I'm a lawyer and activist, and every meeting that I went to about the Equal Rights Amendment, I was the youngest person in the room. And I'm 41, so I'm not that young. And I really wanted to reach out to a new generation of people who had either never heard of the ERA or thought like, isn't that something that happened in the 1970s? That feels like something that happened a long time ago. So I wanted it to be very engaging for this new generation. Really, anyone born, 40 or 50, anyone under 50 probably hasn't heard of the ERA or doesn't know that it's still in play and that we still don't have it in the Constitution. So that's who the book is geared toward. Each of the illustrations, each of the chapters has illustrations from these historical figures, but it tries to, the illustrator, her name is Nicole LaRue, and she works at Gibbs Smith, the publisher, and she did an incredible job of really like grabbing each of these people and making them feel real, making them feel approachable. In the book, we address all of the characters by their first names. So we don't say Mrs. Adams, we say Abigail. And all of this is geared at helping younger people get into the history, understand why it's important, and really want to learn and know about these women and queer people. So who is it for? I like to say like equality, it's for everyone. The target demographics of the book are really people that I want to see as future constitution makers. So the idea of featuring these 12 different figures in the history of the Constitution, from Molly Brant, who was an Iroquois leader before the Constitution was written, all the way to the modern day, is to help people understand that women are constitution makers, always have been engaged in our Constitution and making it a better, more inclusive document. And I want the readers to also see themselves as future constitution makers. So it's for young adults. Like I said, it's illustrated, it uses colloquial language. It's not like what you would expect from a normal text about the Constitution and constitutional equality written by a lawyer. It's really for activists of all ages and feminists and history buffs. So anyone who cares about women and cares about our
Hi, everyone. This is Grace from Booklist. It looks like our wonderful panelists ran into a bit of a tech hiccup, seems to happen these days. So we will jump on in and we will move on with the presentation, and then we will come back to Kate.
Okay, hi everyone, this is Donna. We will return to Kate, and now we can welcome our team from Astra Books for Young Readers. Children's Chicago, sorry, let me start over. Chicago children's author Kate Hannigan writes fiction and nonfiction for young readers. A former newspaper journalist, Kate's nonfiction picture book biography, A Lady Has the Floor, earned 4-starred reviews. Find out more about Kate at katehannigan.com. We're also joined today by Carrie McManus, the Senior Marketing Manager at Astra Books for Young Readers, and Chelsea Abdullah, the Marketing Assistant at Astra Books for Young Readers. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Donna. Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie McManus. Next slide. Chelsea and I are so happy to tell you about some of our fantastic new spring picture books from our imprints Calkins Creek and Mine Edition that celebrate strong women and girls. I'll also give you a sneak preview of our books that will be published this fall. And I'm especially thrilled to welcome our wonderful author, Kate Hannigan. I know you'll enjoy learning about her process and her books. Next slide. First up is Born Hungry. Here is a bold and brash picture book on what made Julia Child, Julia Child. Its knowledgeable author, Alex Prudhomme, is the great nephew of the chef herself and is a best-selling writer on all things Julia. In fact, he and Julia collaborated on her book, My Life in France. This book has a solid endorsement from Julia friend and fellow French chef Jacques Pepin, who calls it a vivid portrait and enjoyable read, and the AOK from the Julia Child Foundation, who reviewed the art and the text. Also, BCCB gave it a starred review, saying that this is a must for foodies in training. Next slide. Bright illustrations by noted artist Sarah Green capture Julia's spirit and passion for all things food, and the engaging story follows Julia's start as an avid reader to an avid cook. This book promotes cooking when cooking shows and cooking contests are all the rage. In fact, the Julia Child Challenge just premiered on the Food Network this week, and a new HBO Max show about Julia is scheduled to premiere soon. Simply put, Born Hungry is an absolutely charming book that will most definitely cook up a storm. As Julia would say, bon appetit. Over
Hi,
to Chelsea.
everyone. Hi, everyone. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Minute Men, but have you heard of the Minute Women? Revolutionary Prudence Wright sheds light on this group of inspiring women, offering readers a close look at their leader, Prudence Wright. Inspired by the Patriots in Pepperell, Massachusetts, Prudence joined the fight against British control, resolving to boycott British goods, assist the militia, and ultimately capture a spy with the help of her Minute Women. Next slide, please. This is history like you've never read it before. This action-packed adventure, a picture book Kirkus calls vivid, absorbing, and inspiring, will keep readers on the edge of their seats until the very end. It's a new twist to the American Revolution, one that will captivate with its striking art and thrilling narrative. Next slide, please.
Next up is To the Front. When people think of Clara Barton, they may think of the iconic sour-faced nurse, or a service station on the New Jersey Turnpike. Or maybe you're watching The Gilded Age on HBO Max like I am, and have seen Clara prominently featured in that series. This picture book will change what you know about Clara as readers take to the battlefield and Antietam alongside her. This is an up-close and personal telling as author Claudia Friedel combines Clara's firsthand account of the battle with her words. Next slide. Claudia and illustrator Christopher Sear work closely with an expert at the Civil War Medical Museum to make sure everything is accurate, from the lanterns to the wagons to the instruments to even the insides of the hospitals and barns. The extensive back matter offers even more information to reveal a woman who was much more than the angel of the battlefield or the founder of the American Red Cross. We're thrilled to say that To the Front has received 2-star reviews, with Booklist calling it riveting and School Library Connection saying that the book is a brilliant introduction to the Civil War for students of any age. This terrific nonfiction picture book is perfect for teachers and librarians and is a celebration of an important woman from our history. Over to Chelsea.
So Blastoff is the very first picture book on Mary Sherman Morgan, the female scientist who helped launch America into space. The book follows Mary's trials and tribulations, starting us at the very beginning with a young girl who was so passionate about math and science, she became a scientist. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, Mary's male coworkers were not so welcoming and often berated her work because she was a woman. Fortunately, Mary was strong-willed and determined and stuck around to prove them wrong. In fact, it was Mary who created the fuel that launched America's very first satellite into space, a feat that we get to celebrate with her in the book. Told by former rocket scientist and Cybert Honor winner Suzanne Slade, Blastoff is as informative as it is exciting and is sure to inspire young scientists. Next slide, please. Lujane Dreams of Sunflowers is based on the experiences of Nobel Peace Prize nominee Lujane El-Houhlal, who led the successful campaign to lift Saudi Arabia's ban on women driving. This beautifully illustrated picture book about a young girl who learns to fly is one that reminds us to strive for change and never take for granted women's and girls' freedoms. Next slide, please. Every night, Lujane watches her Baba attach his wings and fly. Lujane dreams of going with him, but she faces one big obstacle. Only boys are allowed to fly in her country. But Lujane is determined. She holds fast to her goals and eventually convinces her Baba to teach her how to use her own wings. Her impossible dream becomes a reality, and it has the ripple effect of inspiring other young girls to learn to fly. With dreamy illustrations and empowering prose, this lush book will sit perfect on any young reader's shelf. Next slide, please.
Coming this fall, we have 3 great books about strong women and girls. Cloaked and Courage is a remarkable picture book story of Deborah Sampson, a woman who fought in the American Revolution disguised as a man and who ends up finding her true identity and purpose in life. Dazzling Dolly is the inspirational and dazzling picture book that tells the story of Dolly Parton, noted singer, songwriter, and humanitarian, and follows her rise to fame from the beginnings in East Tennessee to performing to thousands at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. And Ethel's Song is a story of convicted traitor and suspected Soviet spy Ethel Rosenberg. This YA novel in verse shares the story of her beliefs, loves, secrets, betrayals, and injustices. Next slide. Now I am thrilled to introduce you to Kate Hannigan, an author with books for young readers that truly celebrate strong women and girls. Kate, take it away.
Hi, you guys. I am very happy to be here. So thank you very much for letting me take part. These stories about strong girls are so fun to research and write as well as read, because I think they're the books that many of us wish we had when we were little. All of these books are essential to show young people how things have changed in the way we live right now, and maybe also how much things have not changed, and to put a face on the people who were brave enough to make those changes. So I'm especially excited to talk about my two books, because these two books specifically, because research into one is what led me to the other. So many of us already know something about Nellie Bly, even if it's just that she's a barrier-breaking journalist. But for me as a woman, I used to work in newspaper journalism, or for any of us who have an interest in journalism, she's like the patron saint, right? So I didn't want to do a cradle to grave story, and there was a lot of material around Nellie, but this race around the world is really what kind of blew me away, just for how bold it was. Nellie was willing to just hurl herself around the planet as fast as she could. And to show readers, with trains getting faster and ships getting bigger and this new technology of the telegraph, she was trying to show readers how modern the world was becoming, and that meant women too. So she loved proving to doubters that women deserve to be valued in society as much as men. And I thought it was really interesting that when she pitched her idea to her editors, their immediate response was, let's send a man. So I loved that setup. And when I realized there was a challenger who raced in the opposite direction as Nellie, Elizabeth Bisland, and that she was a woman, I was all in. So new slide, please. And so thinking about like user experience, like the child reader, I thought it would be, just the way it was going to be taken up by a child. I thought it was important to show how different these two women were, that even shy people could be brave and bold. So Nellie was just in the thick of things. She loved to slog things out. Elizabeth Bisland was like a poet and preferred the company of a book. Thank you very much. So I wanted to show that, you don't always, the change and the bravery doesn't always have to belong to the extroverts, that the quiet types can actually be part of the action too. So new slide. Next slide. Thank you. So this is, iconic Nellie with her outfit and her bag. And I thought it was really important to show how just the visceral aspect of this trip, being seasick. I thought that would really resonate with kids, that this is going to be quite a trip. It's not going to be an easy thing to race around the world. Next slide. And just again, kind of highlighting the differences between the two. On the very day of the previous slide, when Nellie gets on that ship and heads to England to start the race, Elizabeth Bisland gets a phone call from work basically saying, hey, would you be willing to go around the world this evening on a train? And she's like, no, I've got tea, people coming for tea. So I just thought it was really fun to kind of show the differences of these ladies. Next slide. And so nothing adds intrigue to a story as much as cheater pants. So the idea that this race was not particularly a clean one, or the winner wasn't necessarily a clear one, that Elizabeth seemed to be a little bit hoodwinked. That I think that outrage is a powerful thing for everybody, but especially for kids when something might not be fair. That was fun to include that too. I have a lot of newspaper quotes in here because of my background with the newspaper, but I do think when you write for kids, especially nonfiction for kids, it's really, it's tough to justify invented dialogue. So I try to add a lot of newspaper things in there. So even though this was a race, I think in the end, I saw it as a win for everyone. The world was already captivated by Jules Verne's book, Around the World in 80 Days. And so both these women beat his time. And then, these were real life women, not fictional. So they showed it could be done. And not only that, they showed it could be done by women. So yay team. Next slide. So then Belva Lockwood is another example of, women who wanted to kind of push back against the times and the expectations of the day. In researching Nellie Bly, I came across this fantastic article that she had written, and the headline was "The Feminine Candidate for President" is who Nellie was talking to, and it was dated 1888. And I do a test that I'm sure most all of us here do, which is when you come across somebody, you turn to your friend and you're like, hey, have you ever heard of this person? And I asked around and hardly anybody knew who Belva Lockwood was. And I was blown away by her life. I just kept having to learn more. So I dropped Nellie and jumped to Belva. So Belva actually came out before the Nellie book. So she ran for president in 1884 and 88, but she is just an example of somebody who just pushed back bravely. So next slide. So she just trying to take it to the base, a child's level, something a child would relate to. Belva worked with Susan B. Anthony to change the way girls were treated in schools across New York State. She thought to herself, if we want women to have a voice, we literally have to give them a voice when they're a child. And at the time, only boys could come to the front of the class and speak. Girls really could not go up and speak before the class. So she changed that. And she changed something as simple as recess. The boys got to go out and play. And Belva thought, oh my gosh, I grew up riding horses and running all over my farm. These girls need to be out. So she would lead them on ice skating, treks through the woods and things like that. Next slide. So Belva had to fight for an education, and she became a widow very young with a daughter, and she realized that she had no power. And so she studied law. And it was a slog itself. It took a while to find a law school that would educate her. And when she got the degree, the boys didn't want her on the stage next to her. So she wasn't given her diploma, and she had to literally fight to get her diploma. And then when she started to practice law, the judges would bang their gavel and say, sit down. A woman's voice was not allowed to be heard in court. So she took that all the way to the Supreme Court, became the first woman admitted to the Supreme Court. And then next slide. So she decided to throw her bonnet in the race, like keep on going, keep on pushing and pushing, pushing the possibilities is what I like to think of it as. So she throws her bonnet in the race and is immediately mocked. So part of the pictures that you see up there are a bunch of men wearing dresses and having parades to make fun of Belva Lockwood. So she knew she wasn't going to win. She had a great slogan, I cannot vote, but I can be voted for. So she's the first woman to have like a viable campaign. She got 4,000 votes. But I think both Belva and Nellie, they moved through American history around the same time, which I think is great to show kids that history just doesn't just happen in pockets. It's like it's a flowing river, it's a raging river, and we're all on a continuum. And I think great examples of showing individuals who were willing to shake up society in very different and fascinating ways, but they made people look with fresh eyes at the roles women played and the roles that they could play. So I think they were brave indeed. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kate. And thanks for listening.
Thank you, everyone. Yay for Belva and Nellie. Now, I'm very happy to report that Kate Kelly, another strong woman on the equal rights front, is back.
Hello, so sorry about that. My internet completely shut down because that's what happens when you're doing a presentation. So I just wanted to conclude by saying, I think the important thing, so much of what's been said today is critical in sharing these histories. And what I try to do in my book, Ordinary Equality, is tie the history of these incredible women, Polly Murray, Patsy Mink, Abigail Adams, all the way to the present day. And so that especially younger readers who read the book can connect what happened in the past to what's happening today and how they can be involved in being these change makers and these constitution makers. And I think Kirkus did a review and they said it's a fun, vibrant work, perfectly suited to its intended audience, a potential new generation of ERA activists. And that's exactly what I was trying to convey with the book. And it'll be out April 26th. And I'm going to do a book tour at after 2 years of working on this in silo, I'm excited to reach out to people. And so happy to do events at libraries or other things and just get this into the hands of as many future ERA and equality activists as possible. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thanks again to Kate, Carrie, and Chelsea. And now we have Kara Rota. As a senior editor at Chicago Review Press since June 2019, Kara acquires and edits a variety of nonfiction titles focusing on works that center feminist and social justice narratives, as well as music, film, entertainment, and pop culture. Previously, Kara worked at Macmillan, acquiring and editing cookbooks, business books, mind, body, spirit books, and other nonfiction. Most recently, she was a senior editor at St. Martin's Press. We're so happy to have you here today, Kara.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am really excited to tell you about some of CRP's books coming up that are by and about strong women and girls. So we can just jump right in with the next slide. The first book I'm going to talk about is Overdue. So this is that category that I really love as an acquiring editor. That's kind of memoir plus. It has a really beautiful lyrical personal narrative, but it includes so much historical context, research, data. The author, Amanda Oliver, began work as a school librarian, fueled by a lifelong love of books and a desire to help. And what she quickly learned was that librarians are expected to do a lot more than just shelve books and direct people to their next read. They're expected to serve as mediators and mental health crisis support professionals and customer service reps. And they're really expected to be incredibly loyal to the institutionalized mythology behind the public library and what a public library is. So this book is based on Amanda's firsthand experiences from 6 years of professional work as a librarian in high poverty neighborhoods of Washington, D.C., as well as her interviews and research. And it asks really tough questions like, can public libraries continue to play the many roles they are tasked with? And who are libraries for? And can American society sustain this really noble institution? So it's kind of flipping the script. We hear so much about this idea that libraries are going to save us, and it's sort of asking what might be possible if we think about libraries as something that we need to step up and save. So I'm really excited for this one. It's coming out in just a few days, next Tuesday. Next slide, please. Okay, if you, like me, are a little bit of a reality TV addict, you might have seen the show Indian Matchmaking, which was a really fun show kind of exploring arranged marriages for modern young Indian people. And the breakout star of that show was Aparna. And Aparna really kind of was, I think, depicted in a way that focused on her high standards. There are a lot of memes about her kind of, shutting down the guys that they were trying to set her up with. And Aparna just really knew what she wanted. I found her just so immediately grabbed my attention when I watched Indian Matchmaking. But I think that, being on a reality show obviously makes everyone feel like a character, and her decisiveness and sense of self-worth led viewers to see her a little bit as the villain of the show, the unlikable woman. But I think after the show, she got so much support from viewers. I think women are tired of seeing other women be vilified simply because they have a voice, they have standards. And in this book, Aparna's memoir, you learn all about the real Aparna. She bears it all, the good, the bad, and the depends on how you look at it. There's her mother's bravery in leaving her marriage, Aparna's diagnosis with an autoimmune disease, and her confession that she too is susceptible to the deep-rooted need to be pretty and likable. But it's also the story of her entrepreneurial spirit and her success. It's about lessons learned and the strength to be your own woman. I'm really excited about this memoir. It's also coming out next Tuesday. Next slide, please. So this is a series that you might remember from our previous presentations, and that's really filling in nicely. The Women of Power series is a timely, inclusive, international, modern biography series that profiles 15 diverse modern women who are all currently working in their fields and changing the world while doing so, while empowering others to follow their dreams. So the authors of these various books have interviewed 15 women who really kind of stand out for doing different things. The first one in the book, the first book in the series was Thrill Seekers. We now have Idea Makers about female entrepreneurs, Quake Chasers about women in earthquake science, Animal Allies about women in wildlife research, High Flyers, which is about aviators and astronauts, Filmmakers about groundbreaking directors, and Problem Solvers about women who code and engineer. So this is a really great series for YA readers. It's paper overboard. There's really cute black and white illustrations throughout. So we're really excited to keep adding to this series on our shelves. Next slide, please. Discover Her Art is a book for middle grade readers about women artists and their masterpieces. So often when you start to learn about art history and kind of the principles behind different types of art, students are automatically directed to well-known masterpieces by male artists. This book invites young art lovers and artists to learn about painting through the lives and masterpieces of 24 women from the 16th to the 20th centuries. In each chapter, readers arrive at a masterwork, explore it with an artist's eye, and learn about the painter's remarkable life and the inspirations behind her work. It's exploring things like composition, color, value, shape, and line in paintings that range from highly realistic to fully abstract. And then hands-on exercises encourage readers to create their own art. This is a 4-color trade paperback book, so really great for kids who are excited about different types of art and learning a little bit more about artists behind the masterpieces, both well-known and less well-known. The next slide has a couple spreads from the book. So you can see we have everything from very realist to abstract modern paintings in here. Next slide. Okay, the death of icon Amy Winehouse at age just 27 rocked the world. Through the headlines, the world felt like they were watching a car crash, a girl who was simply swallowed by self-destruction. But the truth is far more complicated. This memoir by Amy's best friend, Tyler James, wants to tell the true story from their first encounter singing together at stage school through their wayward teenage years and Amy's dramatic rise to stardom. Tyler was with her through it all. He actually lived with her right up until her death and was the one there with her side by side, day after day, supporting her through career highs, including the massive success of Back to Black and her 5 Grammy wins and her personal lows. This is a heartbreaking look at friendship and fame and provides an illuminating portrait of the woman behind the music and a unique, uncompromising force of nature. Next slide, please. I'm so excited about this book. This is the first full-length biography of Nora Ephron, who needs no introduction, but is the Manhattan-born girl who forged a path of her own. The brain behind movies like When Harry Met Sally, Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail, and Julie and Julia. The popular essayist turned screenwriter turned film director who seemed to find success in every craft she tried. She redefined the modern rom-com genre with books like Heartburn and her hit movies. And in this biography, the author, Kristen Deutsch, is really exploring all of that work, but also examining the private life that Ephron tried to keep in balance with her insatiable ambition. The book is based on rare archival research and numerous interviews with some of Ephron's closest friends, collaborators, and award-winning colleagues, including actors Tom Hanks and Caroline Aaron, comedian Martin Short, and lifelong friends of Nora's from Wellesley to New York to Hollywood, as well as interviews that Ephron herself gave throughout her career. Deutsch has written a captivating story of the life of a creative writer whose passion for the perfect one-liner and ferocious drive to succeed revolutionized journalism, comedy, and film. It's exploring the complex themes that ran through Ephron's work and examining why so many of them still grab our attention today. This book also includes some amazing, never before seen photos throughout Nora's life, including some beautiful ones from her first marriage. So I'm really excited for people to read this. Next slide, please. Okay, the power of plus. Exclusivity runs within the foundation of fashion. While calls for diversity have intensified recently, long-held attitudes are only just beginning to change. But through social media, plus-size fashion fans have been able to create strong communities that show them to be confident, strong, and beautiful. Plus-size fashionistas have been writing their own narrative for the past 2 decades, creating a market all their own that is now worth more than $21 billion. Power of Plus features interviews with trailblazers like Tess Holliday, Hunter McGreedy, Gabby Gregg, and more as it follows the evolution of plus-size fashion from its start on small blogs to its current boom, examining the way the market has changed women's relationship with their bodies. Next slide, please. Bobby Scopus spent close to 5 decades working on basically everything a firefighter can. She did wildland fighting. She was in the Dude Fire in 1990 when 6 firefighters were tragically killed, and she served at Ground Zero right after 9/11. She was also waging a tough internal battle as a transgender woman, trying to figure out how to maintain the facade everyone expected and whether to live as her true self. This is a really beautiful written memoir that includes both amazing adventure stories, an action-packed career of firefighting, and also a very beautiful personal inner journey. So I'm really excited about this memoir coming in the fall. Next slide, please. Okay, you probably know the movie and the song, but it wasn't just a film. 9 to 5 was actually a movement built by Ellen Cassidy and her friends, started by 10 office workers in Boston who ended up building a nationwide movement that united people of diverse races, classes, and ages. 9 to 5 is a lively, informative firsthand account packed with practical organizing lore that will embolden anyone striving for fair treatment. Next slide, please. If you know the movie, bring it on. This doesn't need much introduction. This is an incredible oral history featuring dozens of interviews with the cast and crew, fans of the franchise, film scholars, former and current cheerleaders, fellow filmmakers, and more. Actresses like Gabrielle Union, Kirsten Dunst, and Eliza Dushku have all risen to fame since their performances in this 2000 cheer classic. Not bad for a movie that almost didn't get greenlit in the first place, but then went on to win the box office in its opening weekend. The making of Bring It On is such an incredible underdog story. And this is a really fun read, including a full color insert of never before seen behind the scenes photos. Next slide, please. Okay, from grammar in high schools to corporate boardrooms and military squadrons, Black and Afro-Latina natural hair continues to confound, transfix, and enrage members of white American society. This anthology, edited by Lizette Wanzer, asks why in 2022 this is still the case. It's particularly relevant during this time of emboldened white supremacy, racism, and provocative othering, exploring how writing about one of the still remaining systemic biases in schools, academia, and corporate America might lead to greater understanding and respect. Next slide, please. Okay, sorry, I felt like I was racing through those last few, but thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate getting to tell you a little bit about Chicago Review Press's upcoming books. Please find us online at Chi Review Press and let us know if you have any questions. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Kara. Thank you, everyone who participated today. My head is just full of strong, impressive women and girls. That was so inspiring. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like these that you're seeing here. Not yet a subscriber? Why not? Pair the print reading experience with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com. Lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of this special webinar offer to get Booklist, all of that, for only $75. Patron-friendly, librarian-approved, and free with a Booklist subscription. Booklist Reader, Booklist new digital-only magazine, highlighting diverse readers' advisory recommendations for all ages, has arrived. To see and share the latest issue, visit booklistonline.com/reader issues. We're so proud of this magazine. We'd love to hear some feedback about it from you. And headed to PLA, the first in-person conference for us in 2 years. Please be sure and join us if you're there for our book buzz, which will kick off the conference on Wednesday, March 23rd at 11:30 a.m. in Portland, Oregon. Our panelists will highlight some of the best upcoming books for adult readers with special mention of great books for book clubs. We also hope to see you there. Please come to our booth number 943. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. One more huge thank you to our marvelous panelists. You are all so great. And our sponsors, Sourcebooks, Crooked Lane Books, Gibbs Smith, Astra Books for Young Readers, and Chicago Review Press. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time. Stay well.